I was actually diving a lot in Asia, and I started to see this problem. Coral reefs and the biodiversity was absolutely stunning. And then one day you started to have a lot of seaweed blooming in those areas. And then being a chemist, I started to think that maybe we could actually use that problem for something useful. You have to be very careful with these packaging solutions. It's not so easy to find a solution for the plastic, and some of the new composite bio-based materials are so new that we don't really know what happens to them after they use it.
Hello, Mari. Thanks for joining us in Scouted by GreyB. I'm very excited to have you here. And how are you doing these days?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for the invitation. It's great to be here, and I'm doing very well.
That's great. That's great. So, Mari, as you might already know, we Scouted by GreyB is a long-running series in which we talk to a lot of interesting startups. And when I was reading about Origin by Ocean, I really love the concept that this invasive algae can be turned into useful products. What is it that Origin by Ocean is doing, and how it is creating an impact in multiple industries?
Yes. So what we do is that we are using invasive seaweed species as a feedstock, and we turn them into biodegradable and bio-based chemicals. So we have developed a biorefinery technology capable of converting that ocean overgrowth into a very nice opportunity. And our biochemicals can be used across the markets, from cosmetics to textile and food.
Okay. So when you say this harmful algae, again, it was very surprising for me to hear that algae can also be harmful. I remember that algae was the first organism that resulted in, basically life on Earth, because they gave out so much oxygen. But now it is so. And I've also heard recently a lot of startups are trying to repurpose algae into different forms. So can you share a little bit more about this harmful side of this algae, and basically what gave you this idea that maybe this is harmful, so instead of just removing it, we can turn it into something useful? So yeah, I'd like to know the inspiration behind turning algae into useful products.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a very valid question, what you're asking. I think people are not so aware about the fact that currently, and unfortunately, we are in this situation that we have a lot of ocean overgrowth, and this is actually due to the human action on land. So everything what we do on land, of course, has a direct effect to our oceans and waterways. So these invasive and harmful seaweed species, they start to bloom once you have too much nutrients in the ocean. So we call it a eutrophication. So people don't normally see the problem. You see it once that you have too much of the nutrients, and then you start to have too much of seaweed. And this idea came to me. I'm a big ocean lover, so many of my sports are related to ocean somehow. And I was actually diving a lot in Asia. This was more than 15 years ago. And I started to see this problem. Like, I went to the places that used to have amazing, beautiful coral reefs, and the biodiversity was absolutely stunning. And then one day you started to have a lot of seaweed blooming in those areas. And then being a chemist, I started to think that maybe we could actually use that problem for something useful. And then I started to work on this idea that, what do they actually have inside as, biomolecules? And then when I discovered how much good stuff they contain, and then I started to think that, okay, how do we get them out from seaweed? And then I came up with this biorefinery concept, and yeah, rest is history. So now we are doing it.
That's great. Amazing to hear. And I am aware about that you are like very active scuba diver. You've been active scuba diver, and you've been like close to oceans a lot. So it makes sense combining chemistry with your hobby, and then you figured this out, which is amazing to hear. So Mari, now biorefining is a very common process. It's famous in industry, and it has been there for a very long time. And again, biorefining stuff into other stuff which is more useful, this is also known in the industry. So is there something special about how Origin by Ocean is doing? Is this was there any challenge you faced by coming up with this biorefining process, maybe that is special to your startup? So can you give me some more ideas about it?
Yes, I think it's actually nice that you started your question by saying that there are a lot of biorefinery concepts and processes out there. This is very true. However, I think when you look at closely these biorefinery concepts, normally they are not actually looking at the process itself, but they are looking at the value chain that you take a biomass as a feedstock and you turn that into something else. But this process in between is not normally really bio. So it has a huge impact how you actually then do the refinery. So that's why at Biorefinery, we started from the fact that we have to have a look at the biorefinery process itself. So it needs to be according to a green chemical principles, that we are not using any harmful solvents. We are recycling our chemicals. And it's very, very important also to look at the whole carbon footprint on this processing step. So people don't normally want to do that. And they claim to have a biorefinery when they are using biomass, but that's not enough. So you have to be really transparent when it comes to the processing itself as well. So I would say that our Bauschen, we differ from the current market in two ways. One is that we are really having aqueous-based process. We don't use any harmful chemicals. We look at the recycling of the chemicals, and we want to be very efficient. And the second thing, what we have, of course, is the fact that the value creation, what we do from these harmful seaweeds, is very different what you have in the market. So we are using 100% the biomass, and the residue. Of course, you always have a biomass residue left behind when you do processing, right? So we are producing this added value biochemicals, and this is of course allowing us also to sell the residue to the market where the price is super sensitive, like animal feed, fertilizer, and so on. So that's very unique how we create the value also from the product sides and in a business model. So I would say that there are like two things how we run this in a different way.
It's very interesting to hear that you're able to use 100% of the material and form it into something else, which is, I totally agree, which is not the case with everyone. And sometimes biorefining processes, they end up causing they're like more carbon intensive than the carbon they save, which I believe. And so I also like to hear about that. So how are we on that carbon footprint of refining algae into useful materials? And like, is there a special thing you're taking care of, maybe the water usage or the electricity usage, or how is that going on?
Yes. So I think the LCA is very important in this business, that you have to start that already during the planning phase and the R&D phase. But unfortunately, you get the real LCA once you have the first commercial production ready, because then you really see the efficiency, and then you can talk about the real process. So what we do now, we still don't have this first of a kind commercial plant ready. We have an investment project ongoing today. So we don't have an LCA to show on the process because it's not at that scale yet. But what we do, we map it. So we understand in the process, like each unit operational step, which are crucial to be improved in a LCA. So we constantly do monitoring, and we constantly look at the whole value chain, all the way from the oceans, the products to the market. And we really, really want to understand where we need to improve, because no one is perfect, that's for sure. And you have to start monitoring, thinking, investigating the LCA from day one. So this is where we are today. We understand very well our impact in the oceans, which is, of course, very good that we are taking something out that shouldn't be there. What we don't understand with great detail is the processing steps in terms of LCA calculations. But what we then again understand very well is the end user cases. So we can do our customers very clear LCA calculations when they substitute, for example, oil-based chemicals with our chemicals. So that's why we are very excited, because we published our first impact report this year, and we are really talking about this very openly. And we are not claiming like great numbers at this stage, because we are not ready to do that.
I wanted to understand, now that you mentioned, and how your customers are using and the value they're able to get by replacing your the products made by Origin by Ocean with petroleum-based product that they might already be using. So obviously there are clear benefit of using bio-based materials than petroleum-based, but there must be some challenges as well. I mean, in the adoption phase, or maybe the material, how well this material fits into their supply chain. So have you faced such kind of adoption challenges with when you take your product in front of your target audience, and then they face issue, they question the cost, or maybe they face the integration issues, or maybe the compatibility issue of how well your product will work with their final product in which they are going to use it? So I'd like to know that side of things as well.
Yeah, and that's a very easy answer. There are always issues. There is no such a thing as drop-in solution. Being that petroleum-based or being that bio-based, every time you have to change something in your process or in your products, you will always have issues for sure. So I think this is a clear understanding, like for all of us. So we have low expectations in that sense. But how we do it is that, of course, there needs to be a willingness. Everything starts from the fact that the customer or the partner needs to have the willingness to change. And there needs to be a good reason why to do that. And how we see that with our customers and partners is that the driver comes from the fact that either they have a technical issue, which is there, it has been there, and they want to improve it, and we can help them. Or it might be that they actually want to have a completely new product line, which is way more sustainable than what they have today. So that's also something that, of course, we can help them. And we are not selling our ingredients in a way that they will, save the world and everything's going to be beautiful once you start using them. But we rather say that our ingredient is playing a very crucial role in the whole picture of the products. And we are also very keen on promoting other companies who are producing upcycled ingredients, biochemicals, biopolymers. And we want to show the synergy effect, what you can create by using more let's say, based ingredients in general. And that's how we do it. And I think you have to start from the fact that you as a business, that you are willing to change. You are willing to put the effort in to make new products. And this is how we do it. And then you can cope with all the issues that you will face along the way. Luckily, the cost is not something that we are afraid of to talk about, or the price, because you have to be price competitive in the end. But I think it's also something, how much value you can create to your customer. So that's very important, that you can show your value, that you're not just putting a price based on the volume as such, but you are able to show that you are actually bringing value to the customer. So at Origin Bauschen, we are very keen on working on this value-based selling.
Yeah, I think what you said about, you have to be willing to change. I think that's like the driving force. That must be the driving force for all the industries that can use your product. Also, I believe, there's always added benefit of, regulatory side of things, being more sustainable and, reducing your carbon footprint. Again, not sure if that's something that you are that is going to be your selling point. But I believe, since all the algae-based products, this is like the core USP, that, when you ditch petroleum, you're already becoming a little bit more carbon positive or carbon negative, I should say. So I believe, that have you seen this kind of impact as well, that companies will adopting your solution to reduce their carbon footprint, or obviously only adopting it, or I would say this being one of the biggest driver of adopting bio-based materials instead of petroleum-based?
I think definitely yes. I mean, it comes from the fact that they have awareness that, okay, we need to improve something. And the easiest, I think, for the established businesses is to look at the LCA, because they have to do the reporting anyway. So that's the kind of a core understanding what they carry. We normally introduce them end of life thinking as well. This has been fairly surprising for us to see that they don't necessarily think about end of life of the product, like what happens when you're using it. And this is, of course, very, very exciting opportunity for the biogenic carbon, because it's returning back to the nature. So it's circulating all the time. So that's something that when we introduce this concept to our customers, they normally get very excited, and they look at the case in a very, very different way. And I think it's very important to look at the biodegradability in certain markets, and really to understand that, what happens to this product once you are using it or you have used it. And that's kind of the next level, I would say, from the LCA.
Nice. Makes sense. And you also mentioned previously that, there are lots of technical benefits to these bio-based materials as well. And I remember, a few months ago, we were doing some research on, not few months ago, like a long time ago, when the sunscreens were under scrutiny because of octocrylene and a few more materials, chemicals that goes into it, which are like very harmful for coral reefs and into the ocean. Companies are looking for alternatives to these materials so that sunscreen can still perform while they're also safe for the oceans. And since it reminded me basically of this fact when you mentioned the technical benefits. So maybe we can take an example of a similar scenario in your case, maybe in a particular industry, maybe in cosmetic itself. So what kind of technical benefit you have seen your cosmetic clients see after adopting your Ocean by Origins products?
Yeah, there are many. So cosmetics, of course, depending on the products what you have quite a lot of different trends going on. I think that one of the biggest ones, what we see is replacement of synthetic thickness. That's something, there is a trademark name called Carbomer, so the polyacrylates. And this is something that many of the brands, they want to replace fairly quickly. So that's something that, of course, our products can play a big role. And we are working on it. We've been working on it for quite some time. Then also what we do is that we want to promote more bio-based ingredients, especially in cosmetics. So we can show them that by having our product, let's, for example, alginate, it has a very nice effect with other bio-based polymers. So this way you can get very nice textures, very nice skin feel, and all kind of benefits what you really want for your product. And then there is tons of others. I think you mentioned a very important one, which is of course the whole sunscreen business. But then you have also the actives. One of our products, Fukoidan, is a very active ingredient, so you can use it in the skincare instead of, some of the oil-based ingredients. So there are a lot of things you can actually do. And that's something that you always have to keep in mind, that you focus on certain things with your customer and you start to tackle it.
Makes sense. And yeah, I think I have a more clearer picture now that we talked about a very specific example. Also, I believe, the competition in algae-based product is also rising, and in the similar scenario, of course, nutraceuticals, bio-based plastics, especially in packaging industry, it's like everybody wants to use either plant-based materials, bamboo-based, even some are using like mycelium-based, mushroom-based, and then algae-based is all, I would say, one of the biggest area in packaging where this kind of innovation is going on. So how do you view your long-term strategy in terms of basically your long-term competitive edge in this, let's say, in packaging space, where a lot of companies are entering which are using algae to make packaging products? So are you working with some customers where you are able to showcase this, your USP, or is it something that you plan on expanding on and you already have a plan of action in mind that, okay, this is going to be your competitive edge?
Yeah, so we've been working and we are working with different type of packaging companies. And as you said very correctly, I think seaweed is now seen as a kind of a hero type of feedstock for the packaging. In some cases, it might be. In some cases, not necessarily. But that remains to be seen how that space will develop. But of course, our ingredients can be used there. They are needed if you want to form films or what kind of barriers and all of that. So yes, we are working on that as well.
So is there any specific competitive edge that Origin BioOcean sees? I believe actually all seaweed based packaging product might look same or might have the same properties. But again, I'm not from the industry, so I'd like to hear from an expert like yourself. Can you share any technical benefit people get basically over using other companies which are making the same packaging products by algae, or the ones that Origin BioOcean might be making?
So maybe just to say one thing, that we are not the ones who are producing the final goods. So we are not doing the packaging ourselves, but we are selling ingredients to packaging companies. So what we see, of course, is the fact that there is no such a thing that you can only use seaweed for your packaging solution, but it's always a blend. So you have to blend a lot of things together, and it's a very sophisticated way of producing this packaging. People might think that it's very easy to produce a packaging material, but it's actually super, super complicated. And then you have a real kind of a cost pressure, because if you use a single-use packaging, you use it for 10 minutes. So the price is like super low. So that's what I think. I'm being very honest now. Maybe I'm shooting myself to the foot, but I'm going to say it anyway. You have to be very careful with these packaging solutions. It's not so easy to find a solution for the plastic, and some of the new composite bio-based materials are so new that we don't really know what happens to them after they use it. So we don't really understand the real end of life. Are they really biodegradable? Or how do they behave if they end up in the oceans? How much time they need to biodegrade? And what are the products then once they do it? So I think there are still a lot of things that we don't understand, and there are a lot of things that we still have to investigate. Having said that, seaweed is only, or seaweed-based products like our polymer alginate, it's just a one part of a very complicated picture. So I think the question to these packaging companies is that, are they transparent enough to show what do they actually have in this film? If you form a film from seaweed, is it 100% seaweed? I doubt. So they have to be able to show that, what is the composition And how does that work then once you have used the packaging? I think especially coming from Europe, we've been dealing with all kinds of waste recycling processes for quite some time already. And this is something that we have seen, that most of the biodegradable packaging is not actually being recycled because it doesn't fit into current system. So that's also something to keep in mind, that in a packaging, you are also dealing with the whole recycling processes, how you fit them into existing thing. Of course, I'm just talking about the Europe, and there is other continents where the rubbish is being thrown to the landfills, and that's a very different question and conversation. Sorry, that was a very long answer for the very simple question.
It's okay. I love the depth of the answers you're giving. Really, it gives me a lot of perspective of how, from the other side things, because I'm usually on the other side of the spectrum, where companies are trying to find solutions that they can adopt. And now I'm looking at things, because of your answer, I'm looking at things from people who are actually providing these solutions and how they are thinking. And I'm totally with you on the gray area these packaging companies are living in currently, where they might say their products are 100% sustainable, but they really are not. And these claims needs to be verified. And I believe Europe is a very good start to look at these regulation, or basically to look at these I would say solutions, because of regulations. I guess Europe always stays ahead in terms of regulating recycling, regulating plastic, and usually most of the innovation starts from there, and then other countries follow the same. For example, like currently PPWR is going on, which like forces companies to recycle and use more recycled products in their packaging. Totally with you on this, and thanks for giving me such in-depth answer. Yes. So yeah, going back to like your previous few answers, I had this question earlier as well, which was the feedstock issue. I think you mentioned something about the feedstock, and which made me realize, and now that we have also talked about how many companies are working in this space, which are trying to use this superhero seaweed into like all kinds of products. So do you also see any feedstock issue coming your way, maybe where how these algae is being harvested, or maybe over harvesting? I'm not sure if that's really a concern of over harvesting, but do you see any such bottlenecks coming up in where you get your algae from, and then finally forming it into products?
Yeah, so in our case, this over harvesting is not an issue because we are using ocean overgrowth, so invasive seaweeds. So if we look at the sargassum problem in the Caribbean, for example, where we have between 30 to 50 million tons of sargassum blooming every year, and it's actually ending up in places and locations where it shouldn't be. So that's basically where you start to have a problem, and you have to remove it. So we have that problem that we have too much stuff in a place that it shouldn't be. So in that case, the over-harvesting is not an issue because you have to remove it. But when you are using kelp, wild harvested kelp, that's a very different story. So kelp is not invasive species. It's so-called ocean a good guy. So we should actually have a lot of kelp forest in the ocean. And then you are starting to have this conversation about over-harvesting. So what is the right amount that you can harvest so that the ocean can still survive? I think that's the discussion we don't hear a lot. There are a lot of companies using wild harvested kelp. We are not one of them. We will never use wild harvested kelp. We focus on the invasive species, but I think that's a very valid conversation to have. And that's something we should look at. And coming from Finland, we have a very strong forest industry. That's the same question, how much you can take out and what is the right balance. And in Finland, unfortunately, we have took too much out. And that's why we don't have carbon sinks anymore, because we have cut too many trees.
Yeah, I makes sense. And I think a parallel example of this is like from where my question came is, I talked to one of the startup which are basically what they are doing is they're using a waste bark material from trees, which is generally burned away by paper mill industries, and they're using that to make packaging products. So again, they are also recycling something that otherwise would have ended up in landfill or would have been burned, and they're using it to make packaging products. And I asked the same question to them as well, and they gave me very interesting answer that it's actually abundant material because currently it's not being used. So there's like millions of tons of it available, but the bottleneck comes up in the geographical location of it. So you can have this much material, but it's specific to very limited geographies. So when it comes to expanding beyond those geographies, that's when the bottleneck issue starts coming up. And then you have to think about logistics of things and transportation. And then, it ends up adding more carbon to your value chain then you are saving. And then of course, it just becomes like any other packaging company's business. So my question was coming from that perspective, but I got my answer, and there's so much of it coming up every year, and you can always increase the production as well if done right way, because algae products are used in other ways as well, where some companies intentionally farm algae to make products.
Yes.
And in our case, farming is not the question. It's like it's already being farmed. We're just using it. So makes sense. Mari, so what basically I have like very good clarity about the product and the application and the impact of ocean. And now I want to understand the R&D side of things. Basically, what does R&D map looks like? I understand that you have made a very robust biorefining process where we are able to use 100% of the material, and all of this is applicable in multiple industries. So I want to basically understand the future aspect of things in terms of technology, research, basically what kind of things we can see Origin making in future, and what kind of R&D challenges you see coming up in near future, which will maybe stop you or maybe help you expand.
Yeah, so we're actually in a very exciting stage now that we are having an investment round for our first of a kind commercial production plant. So now we are really moving away from, let's say, from piloting, from R&D, and we are really focusing on building commercial production sites. So this will, of course, change Origin Biocean quite a bit, that we will become, a real company in the sense that this will be then all commercial, and then the sales will start and the profitability will hit the company. So this is, of course, a dream to come true, and we are very, very excited. We will bring 2 products to the market first, but our technology is capable of doing even more. So there is even more value that we can create when we look at this added value biochemicals. So the R&D will continue with these certain chemicals. So we want to push them further in our R&D pipeline, and then of course make further investments into the folk, so first of a kind, so that we can start to produce all of the 5 added value ingredients. What is the full capability of the technology? So it's very, very exciting times. And being a startup, you always have to focus on certain things, make sure that you can commercialize your products, and then have the next round of new products. So it's always a bit of a kind of a stabilizing between what you would like to do and what the possibility is with these commercial steps.
Yeah. And I believe now that you say, as a startup, and this again, actually I'm at the end of my questions, and this is something for my personal benefit that I'm going to ask you. So this is your first company, right? As an entrepreneur, this is your first venture.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Right, and you come from a very technical background, a scientific background, and also then of course it's a perfect match that you had a hobby of scuba diving, and you used to do it. Basically, you were closer to ocean way before than you thought about starting a company. But down the line, you're still a first-time entrepreneur, and you're managing things on your own, and you're working in an industry which is very competitive, and it's becoming increasingly competitive. So my question is, during this journey, did you ever feel maybe this is not going to work, or maybe this might fail, or maybe I might face a very critical challenge in future which will put a halt on things? And I know these are uncomfortable questions a lot of founders ask themselves. So I would like to know your side of how you fight this and what keeps you going, and basically what's your trick of expanding, and just I hope you understand what I'm trying to get
100%,
out of it.
100%. I think my problem is that I suffer from this over positivity attitude. So I always see a lot of, let's say, positivities in life.
It's a good problem to have.
I think it helps as an entrepreneur. It helps a lot. And I think this is my driving force, is this energy of seeing positivity and possibilities. But of course, there are days that, especially when it comes to the finance, there are days that I think that, oh my God, it would be so much easier to go back to, because I come from the corporation. So it would be so much easier to go back to the corporation life. And it would be just nice to come home and have more kind of a balanced life, if you like. But then I wouldn't change a second. It's been absolute amazing journey, a very unique opportunity. I am so grateful for people giving us the funding and the sources to do that. And the team, I mean, the team we have is absolute amazing. And that's something that that I think we all have to remember that even though that I founded the company, but it's the team effort, that these are the people who are working on it, and they are making this thing to happen. So yeah, when you are tired, but then you just keep going.
Yeah, I guess then the crux for me is, you need to have a very positive attitude. I also consider myself a positive person. I guess I have somewhat that. I have that. Basically, I have that on my checklist. And then second is, of course, this is I've heard this from a lot of founders. Having a good team is as equally important as having a non-giving up attitude. So
yes,
thanks for sharing it. It's very useful and interesting to hear. And yeah, with that, Mari, I think we are at the end of the interview. It was amazing talking to you. I got to know you so much from you about this industry, and thanks for giving such detailed answers.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was very nice to talk to you. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.